Probably 2 or 3% of all the people that come to St. Augustine might ride the carriages. Probably 100% of the people who come here see the carriages. So in effect, the carriage drivers and the carriages and the horses are the ambassadors of St. Augustine. And whether or not the people ride with us or not, we are still giving them some kind of an impression of what the town is like, what it's all about, and whether or not they want to stay here and enjoy themselves and, of course, spend some money and maybe come back again and bring friends. So it's a pretty big deal. 2,600 pound, 19 hand, 3-inch tall Percheron that is truly one of the biggest horses that's in the United States right now, and is just 4 inches shy of being a match for the current world record biggest living horse. In other words, if he was right there, that much taller, he would match the height of the current living world record. And luckily, he has a docile attitude, and we can trust this guy most of the time. You have right here all the power of both teams on the field playing an NFL football game just in this part of his body with a brain that is that big. It's the power right here in this hind end is just, there's no way to describe how much muscle power is right there. Which, another way of putting it is, anytime you're this close to a horse, you are 1 millisecond away from death. However, the closer you are, the safer you are. And you see when you standing, this is the kill zone right here. About 5 or 6 feet back is where you get killed. Close, you just get knocked down most of the time, if that was to ever happen. The mission statement was, still would be, to turn the carriage industry that we had control of from something that was quaint and tolerated and somewhat looked down upon by much of the city into what would be considered an asset that the city could be proud of, and something that would reflect well upon not just us, but on the guests and the visitors that were here. And furthermore, we wanted to preserve the historic character of St. Augustine Transfer and the Cooley Stables, which had been here for 130 or so years. And we also wanted to see about what we could do to cooperate with the city they wanted to reduce the number of carriage licenses available. We said, that sounds like a good idea. We would like to have 3 years. We asked them, please let us have 3 years without being interfered with, to be able to find out what we really need to run the company. What is it going to take? How many licenses do we need? When we find that out, get this operation underway, get a lot of things straightened out. This place was a mess when we got into it. I mean, just for example, manure had not been hauled away from here for possibly a year and a half or 2 years. We hauled away 150 truckloads of horse manure in the first 2 or 3 months that we were here. This is stuff that was stacked up everywhere. That's just one example. The buildings needed a lot of work, carriages needed work, the horses were not in good shape, and on and on and on and on. So we were going through all this stuff, just like we had told the city we wanted to, and try to get things going. We got drivers in uniforms. We initiated a training program for the drivers. We did as much as we could do to mend fences or rebuild bridges with hotels, other attractions. The train and trolley tours, who at that point when we came in would have nothing to do with the carriages. They were so upset with the way they had been run. It takes, on any given day, 0 on a rainy day, up to about 15 carriages to cover the business on any given day. Once in a while, special holiday seasons, some special occasion, it might take 20. Rarely. In the last 40-something, 50 years, there's never been more than about possibly 22 to 25 on the street on rare occasions. Well, what's going to happen since we're closing on March 17th at midnight, that'll take 15 carriages out of the mix. As I mentioned earlier, part of our mission statement, we wanted to preserve the Cooley Stables / St. Augustine Transfer name and place of business and a general location and operation because of its historic character. A lot of people question, what is St. Augustine Transfer? Why do they have such a strange name? That's a historic type of a name. In the, say, 1800s, carriage and wagon livery companies picked up passengers, freight, who knows what else, ran back and forth to the train station. They delivered goods throughout the area where they serviced. They were transferring people and property, goods, from one point to another. So therefore, you could have had Detroit Transfer, you could have had the Jacksonville Transfer Company, and that's the way the name, it's an old usage. And a lot of times people would call up and go, can you move furniture for us? And we said, no, I'm sorry, but we're really in the horse-drawn carriage business. And they would be confusing. But at any rate, we were going to preserve that name. And Cooley Stables has been here on this site and actually in this area, which the town grew up around it. This used to be on the edge of town. We were out of town. We were on the edge. 100 years ago, across the street where we're standing was a 200-stall horse barn on the gravel parking lot over there. This area where we are right now, where the stables and all currently stand, this in the day, or back in the day, was the carriage and wagon works area, the office space for the Cooley operation, which was, I believe, I worked with the third generation. I worked with Ambrose Cooley Jr. starting here in 1982 and worked here for a number of years before I started doing my own carriages. As a matter of fact, I took my farrier's apprenticeship right here, right where we're standing. This is where I learned to shoe horses, starting in 1982. That's kind of how this all led into everything. The more stuff I started doing here at Cooley Stables with the Cooleys, the more it occurred to me, like an epiphany, that everything that I had ever learned to do or ever knew how to do was somehow part of the carriage business in St. Augustine, whether it was shoeing the horses, training the horses, caring for the horses, fixing the carriages, driving the carriages, setting up the rides, even counting the money coming in, which back in the day wasn't really all that much, but it apparently covered enough. But it was everything I could do, whether it was selling the product, fixing the equipment, commiserating with Mr. Cooley about one thing or another that was disturbing him at the time. He passed away in 1993. We got along quite well. But taking horse, carriage, and passengers and gone through the liquor store drive-through when we needed champagne or something, or people needed refreshments. And it's all legal. When you're driving a horse, even if you're a private owner, driving a horse in a wagon or a horse in a carriage or riding a horse, you are, at least in the state of Florida, you are a legal vehicle on all state, city, county roads, not the interstate. In actuality, if we wanted to, if we wish to go from here to, say, Jacksonville and go up US 1 and take this carriage and do it, legally, we could do it. And whereas my dad used to say, you could be dead right. And personally, I would not take the carriage for a long distance up US 1 because I got a feeling that people in automobiles might not respect us all that much or expect us to be there. We might end up plastered on the front of a large truck. We'll stick to riding around in town. At least here, people are supposedly looking to see a horse-drawn carriage every now and then. It's not a surprise to them, or it shouldn't be. You have a thing in when you're in high school and they have the yearbook, and it shows, most likely to succeed and most dependable and all that stuff. I think the best thing about being a carriage driver is allowing people that have never been this close to a horse or actually been able to see what horses can really do to give them the experience of both seeing the horse. Step up a little bit, Rumsey. I can't see the traffic. Must be okay that way. Somewhat okay this way. At any rate, it's letting people have a little bit of an experience of how things used to be, because it's not that far back. Potentially my grandparents and a lot of people's great-grandparents, let's say, this is all they had to get around. I mean, you had to use a horse or a horse and carriage, and it wasn't that far back. Sure, there's a great transition now. We're in automobiles and all kinds of stuff. And it's just interesting to me to be able to show people, I'd like to be able to show people how it used to be. And also the fact that it's a lot of work doing something with a horse. So we're going to stop here for a momentary break at Carmelo's. Walk up here a little bit, big boy. I was thinking it'd be nice to be successful at something, you know, so we got close. Up another step. Walk up or stay still? What do you think? Okay. Hold still, big boy. Curb service, that's what we need. A little bit of action out here. We're not losing this business because we were bad operators. We're not losing this business because we were dishonest. We're not losing this business because we didn't have plenty of customers that wanted to work with us. Walk up the step. Come on, come on, come on. Currently 5 operators out there. There's no discipline. There's no one telling these folks whether they should follow the tour routes. There's no one telling them what they should charge. There's no one actually counting what they do charge. I don't even understand. You're supposed to keep records that are turned into the city of everything you do. And I don't understand how, when people are out there running carriages with nobody keeping records, how they turn in any records. But once again, I don't understand a lot of things. It's good timing though. This car is going to come by. We're going to pull out at a high rate of speed. Well, we're going to pull out at any rate, maybe not at speed. We're going to run back and find a battery or find out why we don't have lights. Lights are working. Okay. Got me. I mean, there's a gremlin somewhere. This is a... Well, we won't complain. Lights will stay on. We'll be good. We'll just keep rolling. Because this is actually, you know where we are? This is the pathway, the same road, the same path. It's where Cooley's Carriages from St. Augustine transfer, right across from Carmelo's where we stopped, got something to drink. That was the railroad station, right there where the 3 big buildings are now. Passengers would come in on the Florida East Coast Railway right there at Malaga Street. The carriages would go right down there, pick up the passengers, and go the same exact way we're going, carrying the passengers another, I don't know, 2.5 blocks ahead of us to where the big hotels are, the Ponce de Leon, the Alcazar, and what is now, again, the Casa Monica. And so we're on, in a way, if we were doing a ghost ride, we're on the ghost trail of the 1880s, 1890s, the exact same path that carriages went every day. Red trains and the green trolleys, they have pretty much an exclusive to operate in St. Augustine. They pay a good price to be exclusive. And they have a tremendous investment in all the equipment and everything that they've got to operate. If the city was to decide we want to make it fair and anybody that wants to run a train or a trolley is going to be able to get one, we're going to set up, give them a place to operate out of and everything else, give them everything that they need, set them up in business, it's going to kill those 2 companies. They would go out because their investment would be wrecked. Among other things, if you have a big company or even a small company, at some point you might want to retire or get out and you might want to have something to sell. We had something to sell here, but we got nothing now. The climate changed all by itself and it got cold. The orange trees all froze out in this area. And about that time, Henry Flagler came along looking for an area to develop as a winter resort. Flagler bought up all the Orange Grove property right here where we are and started building on it, and this is what we have now. Flagler College, which now occupies the former Hotel Ponce de Leon, which was Henry Flagler's first project in Florida. That's just ahead of us on the left, but everything to the left of us right now is Flagler College. This is all part of the former Markland Orange Grove property. Property itself is going to go into some kind of foreclosure here eventually because there is a mortgage on it. The mortgage is not being paid. What you have here, this is a grandfathered in stable. In other words, the town grew up around it, but this place has always been here as a stable. Generally speaking, a grandfather type clause requires that you continue doing what you're doing without interruption. And if you do interrupt what you're doing for at least a year or so, you have lost your grandfather exemption or clause, which would mean if, for instance, horses weren't here, which my suggestion would be, guys, whoever it is, make sure you keep at least one horse on this property. Casa Monica Hotel, we're passing by. Interesting story. The guy from Zareta Castle, or Via Zareta, Franklin Smith, the Bostonian, built it supposedly against Henry Flagler's advice. Opened it up about 1890. Within a few years, he was bankrupt. Henry Flagler bought the Casa Monica Hotel for pennies on the dollar. Used it for the Overflow Hotel when the Hotel Ponce de Leon and the Alcazar were filled up. The Casa Monica name apparently did not appeal to Henry Flagler. He called it the Cordoba. Closed up in 1932 in the middle of the Great Depression. Stayed closed up for over 30 years. 1960s, it became the courthouse for St. Johns County. Now we're crossing over St. George Street, which at one point in time was the main street of St. Augustine. In case you hadn't noticed, a lot of the street names here are English names. It's because the English had control of Florida and St. Augustine for a 20-year period, 1763 to 1783. They named most of the city streets. The Spanish, when they named streets, used descriptive phrases. English couldn't figure all that out, so they changed all that to where it was regular street names. In other words, in Spain, one street over several blocks could have several different names. And so most people that would be confusing. So in the English system, we give a name like Charlotte Street, St. George Street, King Street, or whatever, and leave it at that. Our whole focus was customer and service oriented and to try to make St. Augustine proud of its horse-drawn carriage business. And that's what we wanted to do.